everyone. Thanks so much for joining us this evening on a humid Monday evening here in Houston or from wherever you're watching. I'm McKenna. I'm the owner of Murder by the Book, and I'm excited tonight to be joined by Leah Konen and Kimberly Belle. Leah Konen is a graduate of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where she studied journalism and English literature. She is the author of several young adult novels, including Love and Other Train Wrecks and The Romantics. She lives in Brooklyn, and where is this town name? Saugerties? How do you say it?
Saugerties.
Yeah. Okay, Saugerties, yes. New York. I meant to ask you ahead of time. With her husband, their daughter Eleanor, and their dog Farley. All the Broken People is her first thriller. Kimberly Belle is the USA Today and internationally best-selling author of 5 novels of suspense. Her third, The Marriage Lie, was a semi-finalist in the 2017 Goodreads Choice Awards for Best Mystery and Thriller and has been translated into a dozen languages. Before turning to fiction, Kimberly worked in the marketing and non-profit fundraising. Stranger in the Lake is her new book. It came out early this month, and I meant to have a copy here with me. I'm so sorry I don't have it, but
I do.
Oh, there we go.
She comes prepared.
Cue the picture. So these ladies are going to be talking for a little bit. I'm just going to get us started. How are you?
Good. I mean, hanging in this wild world we live in and launching a book remotely and just trying to kind of, make the most of all of it. And just so happy that bookstores like Murder by the Book are doing these events and getting us all together to just celebrate reading and celebrate writing and all of that. So thank you. Thank you for having us and just for doing all this work to really push books during this time when it's just so complicated to even kind of get books out there.
Mm-hmm. It's my pleasure. Now you're in New York, and Kimberly, you're joining us from Atlanta?
Correct, yeah.
And how are you?
Yeah, good. I mean, it's humid here. It's, my book has been out for 3 weeks and it's been a very similar story. I think one of the blessings of this situation is that we get to do events like this and expand our reach and talk about our book and have conversations with a lot of people that we wouldn't otherwise get to see. So that's the bright side of the pandemic, I guess, releasing a book into a pandemic.
Absolutely. We definitely can look at some bright sides every now and then. It wouldn't hurt at all. And so for those of you watching, if you have any questions for later on in this conversation, please pop them in the comments. John from Murder by the Book is lurking behind the scenes, and he'll get me those comments and questions later on. But for now, I'm actually gonna pop off of this call and leave it to Leah and Kimberly. And I'll be back in a little bit to deliver those questions. Thanks.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Leah, I'm so excited to talk to you about this book because I think I read it back, I don't know, it must've been the beginning of the year, right?
Yeah, was it? I feel like I was way behind on Blurb. So it was like 2 weeks before the deadline, and you were so gracious to read it on a tight schedule. So thank you.
Yeah, you hit me at exactly the right spot. And then I read the blurb and I was like, ooh, this sounds good. Give it to me. So why don't you start by telling what the book is about? Because you can tell it much better than I can.
Sure. So it follows a woman named Lucy who lives in Brooklyn, and she's in her late 20s. She is getting out of she's kind of escaping actually a very bad abusive relationship. And she is just like, gets her things, packs a bag, and heads to upstate New York, like no return ticket kind of thing. And when she gets there, she immediately develops this very close kind of codependent friendship with the couple next door, who are these like charming, like artists who, just like kind of the people that just lure you in right away, that are just kind of intoxicating. So Lucy really has no one. She hasn't told even her friends where she is. She's lied and told them that she's gone to Seattle. So her boyfriend can't find her. So these people are kind of her only outlet. And, all is going great. They're having wine every night. They're like, bonding, and she feels like she's kind of found a family again. And then one night they're like, hey, do you want to help us fake John's death for reasons. And because she's an adventurous person and because she's basically kind of fallen in love with these people already, she says yes, because she, in addition to kind of wanting to stay close to them, she sees it as a way to kind of leave town and go even further away with them and be even more protected from Davis, her ex-boyfriend. So yeah, they kind of go on this hike, they fake this guy's fall, and everything seems like it's going well. And then the next morning he actually turns up dead. So basically it all kind of goes haywire, and then she finds herself kind of caught in this crazy situation.
Yeah, you can see that. Yeah. I love how like everybody in this story is a potential suspect. Like this is one of those stories that you read and every new person you come upon, it's like, oh, well, that could be. And so I mean, is that something that you planned going in? Like, is that something you knew when you were writing it, that everybody was going to be a suspect? Or is that something that developed as you were writing it?
Well, I think when I started writing it, I knew approximately nothing. So it was, I came from YA, I was writing romance, like very sweet teen romances, which were awesome. But this was a whole new can of worms for me. So I was teaching myself even how to write a mystery, and as the writer, I was exploring what the answer was as I was going through, and I was changing the game a lot. Mm-hmm. And I think the benefit of that, I mean, I will say I hope to never write a book that way again, because it's a lot of work. And it's like, if you had seen my office during that time, it looked like an FBI profiler. Like there was like note cards and like strings, like it was just absolute craziness. So I hope not to do it again, but the benefit of that is it does force you to really look at every character and not do kind of just a flat character or someone who's just there to be a red herring. And that's the only reason why they're in the book.
Yeah. I
was kind of forced to really develop this cast of women, and which is what I wanted to explore in the book. I wanted to explore these women of all ages who are connected by this kind of very unusual circumstance.
Right.
But no, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, keep going.
Yeah, it's just, so when you're kind of figuring it out yourself, you're acting as the writer, but you're also kind of like acting like the reader, right, in a way, So I did figure it out, and I did come to conclusions, but it was a really fun process. And I think you see remnants of that kind of in the book.
I think you're right, because like I said, it's one of those books that you read and you have no idea who's going to turn out to be, who to trust and who not to trust. And I think, that is, and it's, like when you write it like that, it's like telling the story to yourself.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. But I wanted to touch, because you said something about like the theme. You touched on the themes of like these female friendships and loyalty, and I mean, when Lucy goes, and I can't remember the name of this place that she goes to.
The town, Woodstock. Yeah, Woodstock.
Yeah, and she goes there and she knows no one, and she makes these friends. So, you really build on this relationship between her and these people that she's meeting, especially the females, but also sometimes the males. But like, are they modeled on people Like, where did that come from?
So I know everyone asks me that. They're like, are all your girlfriends like secretly in this? Like, are they like crazy murderers who are like plotting deaths? No. No, I don't. They're not modeled on people I know specifically. I really try to avoid that. I actually, it's not how I write. I find that if I write too close to home, I start to write what happened rather than what's good for the book. Mm. So, I'm several books in now. I think when I was first writing, I would tend to I was writing YA in my early 20s, and I was leaning more closely to things that had happened to me. But now I really try to kind of not go there, because for me, it's not the best for the story. It like limits me too much. I will say though that the nature of the friendships are inspired by friendships I have had in my life. I think especially when I first moved to New York and I didn't know anybody, I wasn't in a situation like this. I was I was just out of college, and just, my biggest problem was like my bank account. But I was, I was so desperate for friends that I'd meet someone, and it really didn't matter if it was a healthy friendship or if they were good for me. It was just like the idea of just having someone in this new city and having like roots that I could put down there. I was craving it so much, because New York is just, it's so many people, but it can be so lonely.
Yeah.
So some of those friendships, especially in those early years, they could develop so fast, but they weren't really necessarily grounded in what friendships I've developed since, or, more longer term friendships were. They were kind of grounded in just kind of two people like needing to come together at this moment in time. And they also were like really like intoxicating in a way, and not just because we were drinking a lot of wine. They were intoxicating for that reason, but just like there's something like magical about meeting a new friend and finding yourself just really connecting with another woman. And in ways it's more magical than dating or what have you, because it's just like they become your girlfriends become people you tell everything to. They like see you through different chapters of your life. So I really wanted to capture that feeling of like being with someone that you don't know that well, but you have this feeling that this person is going to be a really close friend in your life. And then also the feeling of when that can fall apart, because I think a friend breakup can actually be as difficult, if not more difficult, than a romantic breakup. And I wasn't seeing that explored quite as much in domestic suspense. So that's kind of really where I wanted to go with that.
Yeah. And I think you did a great job of that too. And you really feel like Lucy, when she comes to this town and she knows no one and she's really desperate to make friends, she's lonely. And it influences the way she thinks. When her new friend says, hey, do you want to help me, pretend to kill my husband? She's like, well, sure.
I know, when I was writing it, I just kept being like, this is so absurd. This is so absurd. Why am I writing this? This is just like, like bad, like movie pitch. But yeah, I think it was just like, for me, it was like I had to ground that relationship and the strength of that relationship. And it's like, you want these people to like you so badly, and you want to stay with them so badly that suddenly you find that you're going to do anything.
Right.
If it keeps you, Lucy's journey throughout the whole book is finding family. And she thinks she has family with her boyfriend, and then he becomes abusive, and she thinks she has it with her best friend in Brooklyn. And I don't want to spoil anything, but she's connected in ways that make it impossible for her to continue that relationship. Right. So she's just searching the whole book. And of course she makes all the worst decisions, because I love a woman who makes bad decisions. I don't care what anyone says. I love a flawed, unlikable woman. But yeah, that's what her journey is. And that's why she does these crazy things, because at the end, she wants them to be her family.
Yeah. And I think that so many women, I think almost every woman can relate, because we've all gone, either whether it's to college or you move to a new town and you get in this situation where you just really want to make new friends. And so you do things that maybe you might not otherwise do. And I think you sold it. It was great.
Thank you.
So, and also I think that's why this would be a great book club book. I mean, is that something that are you talking to book clubs? Is it something that you?
Yeah, I was actually just chatting with a friend just before this call about she wants to read it with her book club. And yeah, I would love to. I'm hoping to like sit in on some book clubs and be part of the conversations if people are interested in that. For anyone watching, you can email me and I'm happy to come to any book club, to Zoom or Skype in. But, you know, to me, it's like a question I get a lot is like, what do you want people to take from the book? And my personal feeling, and I feel quite strongly about it, is that once the book leaves like my pen or my Word document, it belongs to the readers, not to me. So I'm just fascinated by what readers are going to get from these different women. Like, I'd love to hear it. And I think a book club is such a great opportunity just to kind of get those temperature checks and hear like what people are thinking, not just of the plot twists and of the mysteries, but of these characters. Like, do they like them? Do they want Vera to be their new best friend? Or do they think she's terrible? Or do they think she's terrible and they still want her to be your new best friend? Because that's how I feel about her. I'm like, she's a lot, but I would be lured right in. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of meat there to discuss with book clubs. I think they'll have plenty to talk about. So I was reading, and you may have seen it, a Guardian article. It was out maybe a month or two ago about how most authors, a majority of authors, hear their characters talking to them in their heads as they're writing or they're working on the story. Are you one of those authors? Do you hear them talking to you? Do they tell you, no, this is wrong, you have to take the story in a different direction? Or am I the crazy one?
No, you're definitely not the crazy one. I wouldn't say I hear them. I wouldn't say like Lucy's like, hey, Leah, like, don't do it this way. But I hear the writing in my head always. It's like how I write, and I write first person. So it essentially is that, but it's less like giving advice or like telling me what she thinks and more of just like talking. Like she's just like talking.
The dialogue?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Dialogue. And I mean, I write a really close first person. So dialogue and just description and everything. Basically what I do is I do my best writing on walking the dog or going on a run, because it just writes itself like in my head. Like, you know, when you have those conversations, you know, like you replay a social interaction or some conversation you had with a colleague or something like that, and you think of what you could have said, something like that. That's kind of what I do with my characters as I am when I'm away from a computer. When I'm in front of a computer, then it's, you know, then the pressure's on.
Yeah.
But so I'll find myself, I go on a walk or a run or whatever, and when I come back, I try to kind of just like get it all out. Yeah. Capture it.
Yeah. I thought you were going to tell me that you do like the voice to text or something. I know authors who do that, and that, like, my brain just.
I have done it. I do it when I'm plotting because I like come up with these wild ideas and I know I'm going to forget them. But then the problem is I was doing this with a friend. We were trying to figure out the plot of my next book. There was some plot holes and we were trying to solve them. And the problem was I was walking through the neighborhood and I was like hovering in front of this one house, walking back and forth. And then I'm like, oh gosh, if they're hearing me, I'm just like, okay, so then she murders him and then he turns up dead in the woods. Like, I'm just like, there's no context.
You're like,
I need to be careful. I know, like, I need to be careful about how I do this. But yeah, so sometimes I bust out that voice memo just if I'm like, the plot is going fast and furious and I don't want to forget. I always tell myself I'm not going to forget it, but then sometimes
you
I do.
Always forget. You have to write it down. Yeah.
Or I don't know if you do this, but do you ever dream plots and then you wake up and you're like, they're terrible. Like they felt so good in the dream. And then I wake up and I'm like, wait, what?
Well, that happens a lot, but I did have one book that came to me as a dream and it was
really
exactly the way the book ended up.
That's like the urban legend, urban legend there. It's like, I didn't think it actually happened.
It was a gift from the writing gods. And if I could figure out how to make it happen again, I would. I don't know where to like do my little rain dance or, you know, who to burn.
What did you eat that night? Like,
yeah, I'm hoping it'll happen again, that it wasn't a one-time thing, but.
You're like, call your publisher. You're like, I'm sorry, I haven't been sleeping well, so I don't have a new book idea.
Exactly. Okay, so I don't want to give away any spoilers because I know, I just don't want to do spoilers. But I do want to talk about the ending just in the way, like, it was such a twisty book all the way up to the end. And you said before that you didn't really plot this one out. But did you know that was how the book was going to end when you sat down to write it?
Yes, the like 5th time I sat down to write it. The first couple of times, definitely not. So it took time to get there. And I will say I had the idea of some of the final twists simmering, and I didn't put them in because it felt, I don't know, it didn't feel right, or I was afraid of pulling it off. And I was working with my agent, and she had read my latest revision, and she was just like, I'm sorry, I hate to say this, it's just not quite there. Like, it wasn't like it wasn't like a specific criticism. It was just like, something's missing. I'm not quite like with it. And, you know, of course, so after the panic attack that, you know,
and all the wine and chocolate.
Yeah, after that took over the next week of my life. Then I pulled myself together, and out of kind of desperation, I called her and I was like, okay, so I have this crazy idea. What if this happens? And I was like, it's wild, right? And she's like, it is, but I like it. So I kind of needed a little push and a sounding board and someone to say like, yes, you can do this. And that's where it came. So it was a last minute addition, but something I had been thinking about a long time.
Yeah. I've done that with multiple stories too. It's like, you need somebody to tell you you're not crazy or you're not going overboard to put that in. But I mean, I thought it was perfect. It was great.
I also personally, I admire an author who is willing to go overboard, even if it doesn't always work perfectly. Like, I remember when I read Gillian Flynn's Sharp Objects, I was like, wow, she just went there. You know, oh, yeah. And it's like maybe Gone Girl is a more perfectly plotted book. Mm-hmm. But I love Sharp Objects because she just threw it all in. She just was like, I'm not going to hold back here. And I always really admire a writer who just goes for it. So I try to push myself to do that. And I know that everything's always not pulled off exactly perfectly, but I love when people aren't afraid to kind of just throw it in.
Yeah, and I think in this genre, you can get away with it too, like psychological domestic suspense. It's one of those genres where, readers are almost looking for a little something different, something interesting. It doesn't have to be all tied up in a nice, neat little bow. I mean, they like a twist at the very end. It's what makes
Are you one of those readers who tries to guess everything, or do you just read?
A little bit of both. I mean, I'm usually pretty good at figuring stuff out. But I also read for pure pleasure and try not to think too much about it. I do both. What about you?
I don't guess at all. I just if I'm into the book, I'm like, I love it. I just, and then people tell me, they're like, oh, I guessed it on page 20. I'm like, I had no idea. I just was so into the book, just flying through.
Yeah, sometimes I can figure it out. But, I mean, readers who guess, there are only so many suspects, right? I mean, somebody's going to guess. It's a matter of math. I'm really bad at math. I couldn't tell you what the proportions are, but somebody's going to guess. Right?
20%, let's say. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, keep going.
Sorry. I think it's also that a good twist is a twist that some readers are going to get, because the one thing I don't like is a twist that just like comes so out of nowhere that it doesn't feel earned. So it's like, I love the twists where you're like, oh, how did I miss all these Easter eggs that were in there? And you're like flipping back to the book and like frantically trying to like reread, you know, the first page of chapter 4 and be like, oh, wait, did they mean it that way? So I think when writers put twists in like that, you're gonna have those like eagle-eyed readers who are going to guess. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
I agree. And I think that's the highest praise is when somebody says, well, I finished your book and then I went back to see what all I missed, you know?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. So you were talking before about your writing with YA and how this process is very different for you. How is it different, and like how did writing YA help or hinder you in this story, and why did you decide to make the switch?
So that's like a 4-part question. So
I know.
I'll just go through it part by part. I'll start at the end. So I decided to switch because well, first of all, I love YA, and I think there's so much great YA out there. And I wasn't like, I want to write adult now because it's more serious, because YA is absolutely fantastic. And there's so many great readers, and there's such a community, and I love all my readers. For me though, what was happening was I was only reading thrillers. I was reading your books, you know, I was like, this is what I was reading every single night. I was just devouring these books. And I'm a huge horror movie fan. I was reading and watching true crime documentaries. And I love Hitchcock and film noir. Like I just, I don't know if you heard that. That was my dog barking, but we named our dog after Farley Granger, the star of Strangers on a Train. Like that's how much I'm into like film noir. So, so I found that my interests were just really pushing me in this direction. And I definitely could have explored thrillers and YA, but that's just not kind of what I wanted to do. There's a lot of limitations to write a thriller when you're dealing with teenagers, and you know, they can only kind of do so much. And there are great YA thrillers, and props to the people who are pulling them off. But so I wanted to do that. And I also just felt like I started writing YA when I was like 22, and I felt that I wanted to explore, you know, just issues that affect people when they're out of high school and when they're into the adult world. So that was kind of what was pushing me. I definitely don't think it hindered me at all, in the sense that like those 5 YA books I wrote taught me so much about writing and plotting and character and dialogue and everything. I think the only way it hindered me is I was doubting myself a lot. Like, oh, am I going to write something for adults and it's going to sound like a teen talking? I was very fearful of that. And so it was, you know, it was scary, but I just felt like I actually started this book on a retreat to write YA. These fabulous retreats they have at the Highlights Workshop in Pennsylvania, like the Highlights magazine, they have these wonderful workshops. And I went, and I was between YA deadlines, but I'd already booked the retreat. So I was like, okay, let me just play around. And I wrote the first scene, not the first chapter, but the first scene of All the Broken People, the pivotal hike scene that kind of is the you know, the nut of the whole book.
Right.
So yeah, it definitely was just something that I kind of had to like take that leap for myself. And I was afraid it wasn't going to work, but then, you know, here we are. So.
And when you started writing, you knew it was not YA. You knew it was going to be adult.
Yeah, I knew. And it felt really good. Like I felt like I was in this groove. I was reading it to my beta readers, and who were both YA writers actually. And they're like, whoa, this is so different than, you know, what we've read from you before. And this just feels like really good for you. And I just like absolutely loved it. I just felt like so in tune with what I wanted to be doing. But it was scary. Like, you know, my agent at the time she was a YA agent. And, you know, so I had to make some changes and kind of take some leaps, but it was definitely, you know, I'm so glad I did it, but it's weird to like think about, you know, I mean, you've had about the same number of books suspense as I had YA. So it's like to think about just
switching genres is scary.
Yeah, it is. So, but you know, writing is writing. It's like, you know, how it's storytelling. So
and when you hit upon that story that like sparks something inside, you know it, right? I mean,
yeah,
whether it's, you know, whether you're switching genres or staying in the same, when that happens, that magical thing, I don't even know how to explain it other than that it's magical. You know it, and you just have to write it.
Yeah, and it just, you feel it as you're writing, even though it's hard and you have to force yourself to do it, and it's not like it's easy, but it feels just so good while you're doing it, and you're having so much fun that it's like, you know, it's like, okay, this is where I'm going to be now.
Yeah. So, but how is your process different coming from YA? Did you plan those out?
So I did plan. So I plan all my books, and I did plan this book. I just changed the plan multiple times. Just so you know, I can't just write without an outline. I did have an outline. It just got revised every time I went back. So yeah, I'm a big plotter, and I wouldn't say my process changed that much in terms of like what I would do before a book, the research, the writing, you know, how much I would write a day, like all that was, I got into a pretty good groove with YA, like you know, on your fifth book, or this is my sixth book. So sixth book, you like know how to kind of put the chapters together and those sorts of things. But what did change was I just had to learn how to write a mystery, because it is very different. Like there's a lot, I think plot wise, it's just very complex. And it just gets more and more so because these fantastic books keep upping the ante with twists and surprises. Yeah. So you're like really trying, and the readers too. The readers are so clever,
so smart, and a lot of them are reading for clues and to figure out. You know, I mean, that's kind of part of the game, right?
So there's like this extremely high bar, I think, mainly set by the readers, and so it's, you know, and YA. When I was writing romance, it's just different. Like it's super challenging as well, but it's not as much the element of surprise. It's more of like delighting people and, you know, like building these characters and giving them chemistry, but the surprise is not there. Although my favorite YA book, Love and Other Trainwrecks, does have like quite a twist that most people do not get. So I was always like trying to get those twists in. But so yeah, it was just like, it was a lot of reading craft books. It was a lot of watching, you know, mystery TV shows and all of that, and just kind of seeing like how they put it together. I think what I was doing in my earlier drafts was Lucy would kind of just be going through the world being like, I wonder what happened. I wonder who to trust. And she wasn't able to hone in on like specific clues or specific things. And so as a reader, it was kind of just vague and like a mood of the mystery, but not like something you could kind of follow along with, whether you disagreed with what Lucy's conclusions were or not. So part of it was learning that, like, how to move between these suspects and these different clues and how to time these reveals and not give stuff away too soon, but not, you know, hold on to it. So, you know, I mean, I'm sure I don't know how you do it. Your books are paced beautifully, but.
Well, thank you. I work like outline too. I mean, I have to plan it out because like you said, there are so many moving pieces and you have like, you know, you said it before with string and all the things on the walls. I need to keep track of it. I can't just sit down and write.
Do things change though as you go sometimes, or it's like set in stone?
The things that change is more like character stuff and maybe some structure stuff,
Okay.
but really like the plot lines stay largely the same. But yeah, I mean, it just depends per book. Like some books fall onto your lap in the middle of the night and they're just there, and other books take, multiple revisions.
That should not be allowed. This dreaming a whole plot. It's like, I don't know. I don't know that we can be friends anymore.
It was magical.
Hi, I'm back. I hope that was a good moment to pop back in. The conversation has been great and so engaging. Thank you both so much. Before actually we move on to the questions from the comments, I wanted to mention a couple things. So Leah's new book, All the Broken People, is officially out tomorrow, and we have signed book plates for it that she has sent us. So if you order a copy through Murder by the Book, either online, you can call us, whatever works best for you. We will have book plates to go along with those orders. And I would like to take just a minute to give Kimberly a second to talk about Stranger in the Lake. Can you maybe give us a synopsis, tell us a little bit about your latest book?
Sure. So Stranger in the Lake is a story about a woman named Charlotte, and she's grown up really rough. Her mother is an addict. Her father's been in prison most of her life. And so she's been forced to, raise herself. And she raised her brother, Chet. And she meets this man, and he's much older and he's much wealthier. And she falls in love with this guy and really marries up. And despite all their differences, they're very happy together until one morning she discovers a body floating in the lake behind their home. And it's in the same spot where her husband's first wife drowned a number of years prior. So the story really just unravels from there, and she's forced to, figure out if she married the right guy, if he's telling the truth about everything that happened, and if he knows this stranger in the lake or not.
That's great. So we do have a couple questions. We have Amanda asked, Leah, do you read mystery thriller, and who are your favorite authors? But I think we can definitely apply that to both of you.
Yes, I read like almost all mysteries and thrillers. I think one of my consistent favorites is Ruth Ware. I
love Ruth Ware.
I think she's amazing. I think she's like Agatha Christie today. Like does these like super classic mysteries, but somehow puts these like modern feelings on them. And the other thing I love about her is every book is so different. Like the Turn of the Key, which I guess came out last year. Mm-hmm. It was like a Black Mirror episode. It was like all about like technology, but then it also felt like it could have been, like a Bronte novel. Like it just was so classic, but had all this technological kind of stuff happening. And I thought that was just amazing. And then I love Kimberly Belle's books. The Marriage Lie was like completely just blew my mind. So another one I've been reading, who I just read through her like entire backlist, is Lisa Jewell. She just does these like fantastic mysteries, and I'm just like along for the ride the whole time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with all those. Who would I add? So maybe Heather Gudenkauf is another favorite. A Texan, Julia Heberlin. Am I saying her name right?
Yeah, absolutely.
She has one that's about to come out, next month, I think, or August?
Or August. Yeah, I just got an email about it today, but we've had a connection with her for years, especially with her being a Texan. So it's funny. Someone sent me an email and I was like, of course I know who this is. Like, we love her books.
Yeah, Black Eyed Susan's was the one that got me hooked on her, and now I'll read anything she writes. Yeah.
I also have to agree about Ruth Ware. I've been struggling to read, just kind of my brain won't shut off, worried about the bookstore and all sorts of other things during this time. I mean, it's a constant static up there, but
Correct. ADD.
Exactly. But I just got the new Ruth Ware digitally, and I was like, if anything can pull me in, it's going to be this. So I'll get to that. Diane asks, how long has it been since you first started writing this? I'm assuming that's directed to Leah.
So I think it's been about 3 years, I want to say. It all gets lost in the revisions, but I think it was probably 3 years ago that I started, and I think it took me maybe a year-ish to write the first draft. And then of course there's all of the process with editing with your publisher. And then, you know, by the time it comes out, it's funny. It's like actually been a while since you touched the book.
And you've probably written multiple books since, right?
Yeah. So my next book that's going to be coming out next year, which doesn't have a title, but I wrote the entire book during my pregnancy, like start to finish, like as the baby was growing, the book was growing. So if that book makes sense, like congratulations to me. Who knows? But yeah, I know I finished, the last time I touched All the Broken People was right after my daughter was born, which was in November. And I was somehow doing proofreading while I was like nursing her. And it took a lot of skill. It was like one hand here and like one hand with pen. So.
And Kimberly, are you working on something now?
I am. I've been writing a book during this, you know, pandemic, stay at home, quarantine thing. And I'm one of the lucky authors who can actually write. I know so many who are not getting much written now, but I will have, by the time I'm done with this book, which is soon, like next week or maybe the week after, it'll be a 4-month thing. So way faster than I've ever written a book, but that's because I go nowhere and I see no one.
Yeah. It's either working in people's favor or against them, but there's nowhere in the middle. People are either benefiting or it's worse. Yeah. That is funny. That leads into a question from Patricia, which is, do you ever get writer's block, and what is that like?
I mean, I think everyone gets writer's block. If you define writer's block as like, I just really don't want to write today, which is like just me every day. I think to me, writing is like exercise. Like I don't want to do it, then I do it, and then I am glad that I have done it. While I'm doing it, it always feels very hard to me, even so far in. You know, I think you have moments of inspiration where it feels like it's just the words are flowing out. I don't know, that's maybe 5%, 10% of my time writing. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of just sitting myself down and forcing myself to do it. But when I am like really stuck, like I said, I'll go on a walk, or I'll go on a run, or I'll just get somewhere where I'm not staring at a computer and not feeling this, like the blinking cursor, the pressure. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times that allows things to flow. But I also will take breaks. I try to write every day, but I'm not someone who it's like, if I have to take a day, I think you need mental health days, especially right now. So yeah, what about you, Kimberly?
Yeah, 100%. I agree with all that. The only thing that I would add maybe is for me, when I feel like I'm really stuck, it means that I've taken a wrong turn somewhere. So I kind of need to back up and figure out whatever I did wrong, and then I can move forward. But I've never had, like, knock on wood, right? Never had one of those periods where, you're just really blocked and you can't even come up with an idea or whatever. I mean, that would be really scary. Right.
I think I definitely have had that feeling where I did something wrong and I'm like, I don't want to change it. And I'm just trying to write through it. And then I'm like, no, you gotta go back on this. You gotta change it.
Fix it.
Yeah. And then Jamie asks, Leah, what are you doing tomorrow to celebrate your official release?
What am I doing? So I'm probably going to open something sparkling because when I got this book deal, which was amazing, I found out I was pregnant like the same weekend. So everyone was like, oh my God, are you having like champagne? I'm like, yeah, sure. I know, but I couldn't tell anybody. It was like I just found out. So so I didn't get to do much celebrating when all the good news kind of started rolling in. So I'll definitely be doing that. We will probably get my husband and I will probably get some delicious takeout. But I am also doing a couple events. I am going to be on a radio program at 11:30. I think it's WAMC. And then at 3:00, I am talking with Sarah DeVello at A Mighty Blaze.
She's awesome.
So yeah, and I will be playing with my daughter and snuggling my dog, which are the best ways to celebrate things.
I love it.
That sounds like the perfect plan. Sounds like a good day. On that note, I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. I'm so appreciative of you spending your launch evening talk with us, and for Kimberly for joining and you know, helping with the conversation. It's been an absolute pleasure. For those of you who are enjoying our virtual author event series, we'll be back tomorrow night with Riley Sager in conversation with Abby from Crime by the Book. That's a ticketed event. I think you probably have a few more hours to get tickets and Zoom links if you're interested. We have Ellie Alexander Wednesday, and on Thursday we'll have Revis Wortham and John Gilstrap. So that's just for the next few days. Anyway, thank you again. We're closed to the public still at the bookstore. If you want books, we're happy to recommend over the phone. We are at www.murderbooks.com, order at murderbooks.com, or you can call us as usual. Thank you all again. We really appreciate it. And so the ladies, have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, you too.
Congrats on the book.
Bye.
Thank you.